Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to Cross Wires. It's James here. For some reason, I almost forgot what show I'm recording today. It's been one of those weeks, folks. You know, speaking of recording, my guest this week is a returning guest, and incredibly grateful for him joining us at relatively short notice. Although, well, we'll come to that in a moment. Please welcome back to the show, Zach Moreno from SquadCast.
I appreciate you having me back on, James. It's my pleasure.
That's all right. I only took an email from July to organise this.
That's true. That's true.
I don't know if I want to drop Zach in it. I do. So I met Arielle Nissenblatt a couple of months ago, and she said, has Zach been getting back to your emails? I'm like, no. She says, oh, no, it's just Zach. So you got dropped in by your community manager,
I'll be even more specific. It's just email. I am notorious for despising email, so I appreciate you being patient with me.
That's all good. So we wanted to get you back on the show because obviously the last time you were on, we talked a little bit about what was going to be coming for SquadCast version 5. Well, it's been several months and version 5 has launched mostly without issue, but there's a few things we wanted to talk about. And first up, a little bit of transparency. Now, we've been holding off sort of making this public because we wanted to frame it correctly, and I wanted to have a chat with Zach about how we frame it. So, for those of you who don't know, Jay has been, and Jay would be here, but she's actually, unfortunately, working at the moment in her day job, so she does send her apologies. But Jay's been quite heavily...
Next one.
Yeah, Jay's been quite heavily involved in the SquadCast community for quite a while. And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Jay one of the reasons why you have a pronouns field?
Yeah. I mean, several reasons too, but I think that I kind of consulted with Jay before we launched it or when it was in beta because, you know, it's just something that we didn't want to make any assumptions about, like, getting right, getting wrong. There's kind of it's a newer UX pattern, right? And this being a communication platform, we felt like it was really important that we help people identify however they want and be identified however they like. And that's something that, Jay's been early on giving us feedback, and it's a long-term relationship with SquadCast community. So it's really great that, we have people like Jay and yourself and others in the community who can give us feedback when we want to make sure we have something really nailed before we ship. Some things we can just kind of test out there. Other things, we need to make sure we're doing things really, really right.
Absolutely. And a great example of that, I've said before how great the SquadCast community is, and particularly the Squad Pod. But I've been working with, talking with some of your devs. That's one of the best things. Your devs are in the Squad Pod.
Yeah, our whole team.
Figuring out some API issues like, okay, why all of a sudden is SavvyCow now forcing video and audio recording for all our shows? Not a huge deal, but it's just understanding the use case. But part of sort of that early access and that feedback has meant that obviously we need a SquadCast account to be able to test it. So I just want to make it really clear. Zach and my team are very kindly providing us with the studio plan. So we don't pay anything for our SquadCast plan at the moment. And that's a really generous thing from the team to do. And we will always be try and always be transparent about where we're getting things, either for free or discounted. I just thought we wanted to make that clear. And I want to try and be as unbiased as we can when we chat. And I think, Zach, from our interactions in Squad Pod, that I won't hold back if there's something wrong.
Well, that's why this is a really cool relationship, is because you don't hold back. And, that ground truth of what it's like to be in SquadCast recording, all the time, regularly, is something that we practice in our team, but there's no real substitute for just, creators creating. So that is, part of the benefit of the Squad Pod community and the group there that, is really, really active in Slack is it's access to our engineers. It's access to things early. It's questions about things that we have kind of 2-3 ideas for, but we're not sure which one would serve people the best. There's a ton of interesting things going on in addition to creators helping each other with equipment and guests and all the jobs that we have. The SquadCast platform is something that's always developing and evolving. And that's where, the conversation and listening really comes to life. So lots of ideas there. And a lot of that came to life in V5 and, has been impactful for where we're going from there too.
Absolutely. I mean, great example. The last time we recorded together, you did a manual squad shot by doing a screen capture of the browser window. But now we have...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, literally, I went, because when I was redoing my new site, I'm like, that doesn't look like a normal squad pad. I'm like, oh no, Zach did a screenshot of that because that's something that's in V5. So in version 5, we have this wonderful button, but basically our workflow is at the start of the episode, before we even hit record, I say to our guests, hey, let's do a squad shot, click the button, and it grabs an image. What's really cool, I know we talked about this, I think we talked about this post-show last time, but it does a composite image, which looks great and has your show's branding and everything like that, and SquadCast branding. But then it also gives you individual images of each guest. And that's great for use with maybe artwork generation tools. The Castos team just launched something recently, and the name of it's completely slipped my head. It's a free artwork generation tool. Now, of course, you could just grab your images from the SquadCast dashboard and use those in that artwork generation, and it looks fantastic. So, just another great V5.
That's cool.
Yeah, it works really well. So, anyway, before we dive into some of what's cool about V5, with V5, Zach, came, I think it's fair to say, a simplification of pricing.
That's right. That was our goal. And, tell me if you feel like it was more complex or something like that. But that was certainly our goal. Is we had different pricing for like audio versus video as one example, and that's where I think the biggest kind of simplification came from, was that video is now just kind of part of the old audio plans, is kind of how I think of it. We treat video more like a feature instead of a separate product in our pricing. It was always kind of in our same product, like just, same button you push and you get more files. In addition to audio, you get the video. But in our pricing, it was two separate things, because our pricing, our costs for video versus audio were two very different things, let's say. And, our engineers have made a ton of optimizations to bringing our costs down to get those videos rendered very quickly. Was something that was important to us on day one for video. That turned out to be a fairly expensive operation, so that's where we had to adjust our pricing in the beginning. But over time, now having video on the platform, I think for close to almost 2 years now, we've made a number of optimizations that allowed us to bring our costs and therefore the price way down. And that's fantastic, because we see in our data more creators creating video now that is reaching new audiences and helping them grow their shows. Absolutely. And the price points are really simple. $20 is, now let me get this right, that's audio only, isn't it? $20. That's right. Yeah. The indie plan is the only one that is audio only currently. Okay.
Now, just to be 100% clear, you still get video in the conversation that we're having. It's just not recorded.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And SquadCast from day one has had video for the, we call this, the conversation, separate from the recording. So yeah, you have body language and eye contact and all that, whatever plan you're on. Those are everyone features. Yeah.
It's really important because you can get a sense of when a guest is about to speak. You can get a guest of when maybe get an idea of when a guest maybe needs to go and get a cup of tea or take a break, or when something goes drastically wrong with the audio. So if I started seeing smoke coming out of Zach's interface right now, I know we need to take a break.
Yeah. Especially with more than two people, like, with one other person, you can kind of read when people want to speak and things like that. But once you get, SquadCast can connect up to 10 people to record audio and video together. So that, once you get to that third and fourth person, the video also starts to serve as kind of like, indication of, who's going to speak when, and you get fewer collisions that way. And that's why on conference calls and things, you hear people all like pause for a second, and then everybody starts to try to talk in that space, because you don't see the other people trying to, kind of lean in. And that's what we've found on the SquadCast recording platform, is seeing people, communicates on many levels.
Genuinely, I am impressed by the way the video is delivered. You get, you can have an MP4 which has the video, and then if you want to be fancy, you can have a WebM which doesn't have the audio. Because if you're going to mix your audio independently, great. It works really well. And of course, there are the cloud recordings, which we talked about last time. Now, they are effectively the save our bacon recordings if something went wrong with the locals. And I very, very rarely, and it's something we'll talk about in the sort of a V5 launch, have had issues with local recordings. But those cloud recordings just come in so handy. And of course, there is an option to get just a full mix of everyone. It's like a conference video, but again, individual tracks. So you can take it into whatever app you want. With DaVinci launching Resolve onto the iPad Pro, you really are starting to get some powerful. This show, the audio is entirely produced on an iPad using Ferrite, and I cannot say enough how much I love Ferrite. Version 3's literally came out earlier this month. So good. We're hoping to have the team from Woozy Juice on the show, or one of the devs from Woozy Juice to come and talk about it. But anyway, going back to SquadCast. Nice. So then we go to the Pro plan, which is $40 a month. That gives you video. That gives you, now let me get this right, 5 on stage.
That's right. Yeah, I believe it's 3, 5, and 10, I believe. And that's number of people that you can record with and collaborate with, recording audio and video. There's kind of part of V5 was also adding, in addition to people recording who are like on mic, on camera, we also have backstage. So people just watching and listening. You also get more people who can join your recording sessions, but in the backstage. So yeah, you can have 3 people on stage, 3 people backstage, or 10 people, whatever your plan that you're on.
And I'll give a really good use case for when that's really handy. So when we had Helen Horseman-Allen on the show from Fastmail, one of their PR team asked if they could sit in on the recording. Well, obviously, we didn't really want their PR team being...
Yeah, very common.
Being on camera and being part of the recording. And I don't think they wanted that either. They just wanted to be able to watch to make sure, she didn't say anything too controversial. So we just sent them a backstage invite. Jay, my co-host, will... often be sat backstage. If she's maybe coming back from work and she can join the recording later, she'll just drop into backstage. What does scare me as show admin is that she can bring herself on stage. Mm-hmm. That's happened post-show once, and it scared me to death. Like suddenly Jay pops up on the feed. But it's a great feature.
You could stop recording. You could change people's equipment. There's a lot of controls you can do from the backstage. Well, let me restate that. You can prompt people to change their equipment and things like that. But yeah, there's a lot that can be really cool about the backstage. Well, of course, yeah, Jay knows her stuff about production, so not wanting to prematurely hit that stop button. But it's something that we've seen creators first kind of, I don't know if we did the best job of communicating the benefits of it. Like if you've experienced what you just described, I think a lot of people just said, oh, cool. That's exactly what I've kind of wanted. And those people end up joining kind of before we had backstage. They would join the session just like everybody else, except they'd kind of mute and turn their camera off. But yeah, it takes up one of the seats, and if you have a large production crew, it's kind of waste to record their file and just kind of throw it away. Although we do have people who do things like that too, so it's pretty interesting, and we have a lot of interesting plans for how the backstage experience will continue to evolve.
Well, that's something I want to ask you about. But you mentioned something that's I don't know if this was my memory's going. I'm getting towards my old age. In previous versions, was it as easy to see what equipment people were using? I don't believe it was.
You could see what device people had selected, and there was kind of one way to do that, right? It was like kind of click on their name, and you could see the equipment that they had selected. If they changed their equipment, it would change. So that's good, right? That's more than you get in something like Zoom or Skype. But we wanted to go farther than that. And this being a proper cloud recording studio, equipment matters way more. Which device I'm using. Am I using this device or, this other mic over here? So that's where that transparency was kind of a first step, but we knew that we wanted to go farther than that. In V5, actually, one of the minor updates after V5 We've shipped many since then. It's been about a little bit over 5 months now, I think. And one of the features that we've added since V5 rolled out is the ability to not just see other people's equipment, but to see all of their available devices and then switch for them, prompt them to switch their device, which is how we deal with the question of security. So as you can imagine, if you could just change my camera from this Canon to my built-in, you're probably going to get like a different angle of me.
Yeah.
You're going to get different things in the shot, and I may not want that, right? So this could be a privacy concern, but what we've done instead is that you can like click on the microphone drop down for your guest. You can select a different microphone than the one they're using. And it doesn't change it right away. What it does is it prompts them to politely say, hey, Jay wants to change your microphone to this other device. Do you want to accept or decline that offer? And you don't have to do anything other than click that button to switch your equipment around. And we find this really, really helps with kind of helping relieve the pressure from guests to kind of get their equipment set up all on their own. And I think that that's something that's very unique to SquadCast. I don't even think others in our category have tried to copy that yet. And it's something that, you're just never going to see in like Zoom. I think it's something that's unique to SquadCast.
And it is, and you make a really good point where you've got the guest who maybe is a great guest. And, we are a technology podcast, so to an extent, we somewhat expect our guests to know what they're doing in terms of setting audio equipment up. But you might, there are lots of shows recorded on SquadCast. The whole point of SquadCast is that it makes recording any type of show super easy. And, even though technically speaking, iOS is still in beta.
For now.
For now. Well, we had an episode recorded where Jay was literally, in fact, it was our Fastmail episode. It was our episode with Helen, and Jay was literally sat out in the lounge on her iPad, recording the entire session. And it does work. There are a few caveats, and it's mostly down to, I think, without getting too deep into this rabbit hole, Safari has its challenges, shall we say, certainly in things like WebRTC. But I know from when we've spoken before that you guys have quite a good relationship with Apple to work on that sort of stuff, which is, encouraging, and it's good, again, that transparency helps.
Yeah, thankfully it's open, WebKit and Safari are open source, so to some degree there's visibility there, but the team at Apple still prioritizes their own workload, as you can imagine, and there's different focuses at different times. In a company that size, you're always going to have, complexity, competing stuff. But, I would say that Safari is probably still the farthest behind out of all the browsers with their kind of WebRTC plus audio plus video stuff. But they've come a long way faster than anybody else. So it might even be a toss-up between Firefox and Safari nowadays in that camp. There's a number of frustrating things that Firefox just should and does not do that are kind of ridiculous, or things that they do differently that we have to kind of work around and deal with. But yeah, none of our customers really have to worry about that. It's more just kind of how we make things happen across all those different browsers. But yeah, I would say that the iOS is still considered beta, not because of its stability, but because of like 2 or 3 feature tweaks we want to make to the platform in particular. Like we want to default to active speaker as the layout on iPhone in particular, because the iPhone just, as soon as you render 2 videos at once, or more, it really just like it heats up. It really starts to struggle. You see all of the performance metrics start to respond negatively to it. And, SquadCast, you could have 10 people on the screen. So, It could get really hairy. And, we do this kind of active speaker switching, but what we really want to do is just have like one video that is the active speaker and switch between that. And some of the tweaks we've been making under the hood with our Dolby integration are setting us up to make that happen very soon here. So that has been in beta. It'll be a year, in a week or two, probably a week, because it was right before Christmas last year. So I think that should come off in Q1 is my guess. The iPad is particularly awesome.
Yes, no disagreement there. I'm going to ask you something a little bit direct, and it's something I hadn't mentioned before the show, but it just came to mind. When Jay said, SquadCast are getting an iOS beta, my first thought is, wonderful, test flight, we're going to have a SquadCast app. I'm assuming the reason that's not the case is going back to that whole simplicity of recording, not making your guests install an app from the App Store just to record.
Yeah, exactly. Is the web provides the most accessible experience possible out of all the different platforms that you could release an app on. That's where our focus has been. But I also would say that we've built our technology in a way where I wouldn't rule out a native app in addition to the web, but we find it kind of ridiculous that you would have a native app only and no web app. So there's some of our competitors who are in that situation, and I find it really weird choice. But yeah, we want SquadCast to be accessible everywhere. I'd love to say, hey, smart speaker, connect me with James so that we can record a podcast. Everybody has these high-powered quality microphones that you can buy at Target for like $20-$30. It's a microphone array with native hardware background noise reduction, which is probably better than what my mic can do, maybe what your mic can do. And those devices are ubiquitous. They're already everywhere. People have them in their house. So like if everybody who had one of those smart speakers could just start creating a podcast by talking to somebody through it, that would all of a sudden, you don't even have to go and buy a microphone. You already have one. And, it's really good quality compared to the things in our cameras or our computers.
I hadn't thought about that. I love that idea. And we were talking pre-show about, SquadCast being accessible. Look, me and Jay have now got Steam Decks, and Jay, the engineer, who's a squad podder, I think you were saying actually came up to you at Podcast Movement and actually showed you, hey, SquadCast is running on the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is an x86 or x64, whatever, computer. It can run Chromium. It can run Firefox. It's got USB-C. You can plug a USB hub into it and plug in a webcam, plug in an interface. Huge, of course, plug there for the Vocaster 1 because, again, incredibly portable for this sort of stuff.
And USB-C, so you don't even need an adapter.
Oh, that's a good point. Well, I guess you would if you wanted a camera, I suppose, as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But good point. If you're just doing audio, yeah, why not? You could just do that. So lots of accessibility. Before because there's so much I want to talk about, but I'm very much aware we want to stay a little bit focused. Let's talk a little bit about the V5 launch and sort of the launch problems, because I've worked in software, I've worked for support, and no initial release of software is ever bug-free. In fact, let's just be really honest, no software is ever bug-free. As hard as anyone tries, no software is bug-free. And there were a few issues. What was that like for yourself and the team? How did that feel? I guess two questions, like, what have you learned? And from when we talk about, one of our big messages at Crosswise is treating people with respect. Did you have any issues with people being not as kind as they should have been?
Well, I mean, it's the internet, so you're always going to get, a wide array of voices. That's cool. I think that it's kind of the innovator's dilemma, right? You want to make improvements. People are asking you to make improvements, but the process of making improvements is to introduce change, and change, if not, properly managed, can really go in weird directions. So that's where it can be a bit of tug of war between keeping things the way they are for people who are comfortable with that, and the people who want to push things forward, which as a technologist, I'm kind of in the extreme camp of early adopters and things. So I I have a bit of a different problem. I have like the curse of knowledge, right? I know exactly how SquadCast is supposed to work, what's not supposed to happen, all that stuff. And that can make it difficult because I'm inherently I can't shed that. I can't just turn that off. And that's a different perspective than our customers. And then even amongst our customers, there's a number of different perspectives. There's a number of different use cases, right? The audiobook crew is going to have different things than the podcast crew and video and, all of the things that people are creating on the SquadCast platform. So what we always focus on is providing a clear path forward for people, and that they don't feel caught off guard, and that we can communicate these changes are going to happen, because the behavior on SquadCast is to invite people and kind of set things up in advance and then record. So, it's very timely. Like, things have to work right when you are connecting. And then there's also like, it can be difficult to schedule things like maintenance windows, right? Is something people may have run into in the early days of the web. Like, this is under construction, things like that. We try not to do that because our customers book things in advance. And so we try to always achieve what's called a dark rollout and roll out these features so they don't impact anybody, and we can always roll back. And, I can talk at length about the different things that we do to deploy updates that are designed to not rock the boat for customers. But with V5, we also were ambitious in that we wanted to migrate from one database to another. And that, for anybody who's ever updated software of any kind, a database migration just kind of turns it up to 11. If it's already kind of like changes that you want to make, that's kind of, you got to be on point for that. There's if you're working with database and data, it's a whole different ball game. So this was also the first database migration that SquadCast, the platform, has done. So there was that piece of it as well, and thankfully that went off pretty well. But there were some side effects that were a little tricky for us to track down. So in the days and weeks following V5, thankfully, I'm proud to say that none of the issues that we kind of shipped on day one and found out about shortly, after more people started using it, thankfully zero. None of those issues were kind of on a scale where they affected everyone. There were kind of things that were localized or only kind of, if you had this combination of settings and things like that, right? So that's where we work hard to get it in front of that. And we have our beta and people like you and Jay in the beta to give us feedback. But there's no substitute for getting it out into the real world. So that's where we were focused on just moving really quickly, right? And addressing and being transparent with people, but we're not going to put anything out there that's like not safe to record with, or, is going to introduce any kind of like extra anxiety, but just kind of changing the pixels around on people, depending on who you are, right? That can have different effects on people.
And there were little issues, little API issues, like, let's just be really honest, SavvyCal broke for a short period of time.
That's right, because of the data. And that one was a bit tough for me in particular, because I thought that was one that we had figured out, that we were ahead of that one. But for, a combination of reasons, the APIs, the backwards compatibility didn't quite go as planned. It's patched up now, thanks to the teams at Captivate and SavvyCal, and for customers like y'all for being patient with us for the time it takes to kind of get that stuff plugged back together.
I will say this, one benefit is absolutely had is it's taught me a lot more about how to use Zapier.
That's great. Yeah, and we use Zapier at SquadCast, and part of the V5 update was not just the API version 2, because we had this new data model, right? We had to update the API to version 2. So that's great. It expanded the number of endpoints. It expanded the number of webhooks that people can use. And then we also got our official listing on the Zapier kind of marketplace.
Yeah.
Which was kind of in this, they have like this process where you got to kind of go through before you get officially listed. And it was like in alpha before that with our V1 API. So that was another piece that is really great. We added the Descript integration in V5 as well, and then with the Zap, right, there's a ton of the ecosystem that opens up is like thousands of other apps that you can connect SquadCast to now.
Well, until Google made some changes to the Google Drive API, it appears recently, I was able to, whenever a recording, like the one we're doing now, wherever a new recording file was available, I was able to send that to Google Drive, and then my NAS, I'm pointing it the wrong direction, it's now out there, my NAS would then pull down those recordings as a backup. Worked great until Google changed things. So not a SquadCast issue. But because you exposed so many endpoints, I was able to do some really cool things with, that functionality. And, you mentioned Descript. I love Descript. I mean, it struggles with my accent. For transparency, we will be using Descript for transcription. We've decided Jay is going to be doing our transcription. And although we won't do a direct SquadCast integration, we're going to send stuff up afterwards. It does mean that, we've got so many options there. Now, V5, it has been fantastic. I have to say it's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. Now,
thank you.
One thing that we recently discovered because we were able to move to the studio plan, Zach was saying pre-show, it's been there since about version 3.5, and Zach's hinted at this Dolby. So now, since then, now we're actually mastering our audio in SquadCast with Dolby, and there's a load of components to this, but it takes away so much of the post-production, the amount of less work I'm having to do, because before I was running everything through, Auphonic on my desktop, then maybe doing bits in my DAW on my iPad, but now I just love this. Now this is non-destructive, so it keeps the original files and then creates secondary file. It creates a copy, which is the mastered copy.
That's right.
Am I right? That also creates a new copy of the video as well with the new mastered.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I think just yesterday or the day before, Dolby updated it to now accept videos. So I think that's out or that's about to be out, where you can send videos through Dolby mastering as well, and it'll work the same way.
Wow.
And the audio in our SquadCast videos it's not any lesser quality than the primary audio recordings. It's the same recording. So that is something that, we've had customers kind of frustrated that in the past, like, hey, I can master the audio alone, but I want to master the audio in my video. So now that's something that, you can just select files that have videos in your workflow drawer on SquadCast and send them over to Dolby, and they'll show up there for you.
So nice. And we were talking pre-show about just how much it actually does. It does volume. It does. I'm going to get some of it. It does volume leveling. It does noise reduction. It tries to remove plosives if maybe you don't have a pop filter. It does so much.
Yeah,
and I love it. Now that's only available at the moment on the studio plan, and it's worth it. But let's talk a little bit about. There's two things I want to talk about. I'll start with the easy one. When I think about SquadCast, my mind instantly goes to podcasts. That's the type of content creator. But I think you and certainly the team have started to show actually it's far more. You mentioned audiobooks, so it makes perfect sense. Be able to work remotely, particularly in the last couple of years, be able to work remotely and get great quality audio from your audiobook narrator makes perfect sense. YouTubers, I know Alex, our Charging Status co-host, he uses SquadCast to record his video interviews for his YouTube channel.
Nice.
Well, it makes perfect sense because, you're getting, out of the box by default, it's 720p, but you can turn on 1080p. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the only reason that's off by default is bandwidth.
Yeah, we kind of fear that people just bigger number better and then, kind of put themselves or their guest in a situation where it's a bit too much for their network. So, yeah, we want it to be something that is like opt-in because those files are so much larger. And occasionally we'll see 4K files come through where like our system isn't necessarily like set up for that. That apparently works. And we've made some tweaks to our backend that, actually renders those 4K files. They take a little longer, but I mean, we just saw one earlier today. A single file was over 9 gigs, for this video. So,
wow.
This is one out of those 10 participants, so that's the size files we're talking about here when you start to, opt into those higher video qualities.
I dread to see your cloud storage bill. I don't know how you look at that. Or do you just try not to look at the cloud storage bill? Like, it's okay. It's all good. It's all good. It's been paid for.
Yeah, we are, we're a self-funded company, so keeping our costs managed is a huge part of that. It can get out of control if you don't. So yeah,
absolutely. So, but things that maybe people will overlook is not only have you got audio and video, but as was demonstrated at a recent SquadPod business hours event, screen sharing is available as well. And that is on everything. So it's on it's on my Pro and my Studio plans. Now, question for you: what sort of resolution is that capturing at 720p as well? Is that sort of scaling, or how's that working? How does that work in terms of the resolution of a video capture?
Yeah. It's so all the plans can share screen and see share screen. The screen share won't be recorded unless you're on a plan that has video recording. So that would be Pro and Studio, but everybody can screen share. And then, if you have a video recording and you share while you're recording, it'll capture that as like a third stream. And the resolution will be just whatever window or screen you choose to share. It'll be at that resolution.
If I've got a 1080p display, it's going to capture that 1080. Wow. Or window.
That's right.
And that opens this up to a lot more. So, to my mind, I'm absolutely going to start using this for doing potential videos where it's actually a lot easier to use SquadCast than worrying about setting up OBS or, worrying about the overheads of setting up additional things. And of course, it's then all synced because you've got the video, you've got the audio, and you've got the screen cap. Now, the screen cap doesn't contain audio, but of course it will be, because it's recorded in the same time window. It's going to be mostly in sync. I think there was a slight issue earlier, maybe about a month or two ago, with something Google changed in the WebRTC implementation that meant some recordings got a little bit out of sync. That was a fun message. It was only on Mac as well, and I remember the messaging on that one. Like, this is a bit of a fun one.
I'm grateful for that one though, because it led to some optimizations in our working through, kind of working around that problem and getting an update out to fix it. It's one of the only, it's happened 2 or 3 times where the browser vendors actually have shipped a regression in their platform. And, we got to deal with that as quickly as we can. And sometimes they're not fast. So that one we did work out a solution to, and it actually ended up speeding up our video rendering. I think something I announced on my Twitter a little while ago was that some of the optimizations our engineers had worked out increased our video rendering by 15,000%. 1,500%. My apologies, not 15,000. 1,500%.
Still an impressive number. Like 1,500%.
It's crazy. Yeah. So let me pull this up just because I don't want to misstate it. But 1,494% faster. A 30-minute video used to take close to 12 minutes to render. Now they take only 48 seconds on SquadCast. So that is a 1,500% faster increase, and it's bananas because it's just how quickly you get your file after you click stop. And SquadCast, I think, was already kind of the fastest in the West when it came to rendering. But what this really, another way to say this is that our video now renders a little bit slower than our audio. It's not quite as fast as our audio renders. But I will say our audio renders ridiculously fast. It's
insanely fast.
You know, for an hour or 2 hour long file, it'll render in 4 or 5 seconds, some ridiculousness. So now we're seeing videos, render in just a few more seconds than that. And that's just it's like ridiculously fast. I don't know how else to say it.
And it really helps with post-production, particularly if you've got tight turnarounds. Now, one question I just wanted to make sure I'm clarified, because from the last time we spoke, and we'll put a link to Zach's previous appearance in the show notes, but because of a progressive uploads, your guest isn't necessarily having to hang around at the end of a call unless they've got really slow internet. Is that a fair...
Yeah, and now we have even gone beyond that point. And what you said is true. Most networks, most things that we see, nobody has to wait around. Even for video, your network can essentially keep up with how quickly your recording is uploading in the background every few seconds. And but as you can imagine, like physics, right? So, like bandwidth limit supply, things like this are sometimes out of our control. And in those cases, we'll just kind of like buffer. And now we even tell you and everybody else how much more is needed to upload. We estimate that's going to take this long. Most people don't see that, but in the case where you do need to see it, it's really helpful to have that transparency to say, okay, this is going to take, 2 more minutes to finish up. And meanwhile, I can actually now in one of the minor updates we release after V5, now you can actually just the entire time you're recording, you can watch the uploads happen as they happen in the recording sidebar while you're in the studio. And I just want to point this out because it's in stark contrast to how some of our competition, like I think all of them, you don't even get your recording while you're still in the studio. With SquadCast, you get your recording as soon as you click start record, let alone click stop. Mm-hmm. And I think that gives, it gives me as a creator, and I hear over and over from the creators that we serve that it gives them confidence to know that, okay, this file is uploading. I see it happening. I can even now preview that file while I'm still recording that file, which is just bananas. How is that possible?
Do you remember,
so cool.
Do you remember the movie Spaceballs, where they're watching the movie that they're making?
Yeah, exactly. That's the vibe that it kind of gives you, right? It's like, it's super cool because we always recommend recording like a sound check, a little quality assurance to make sure I'm using the device, my mic, my camera that I expect, that my VPN's not blocking something or, any of that weirdness. Like,
or in the case of our last session trying to record, my router.
Yeah.
I've not publicly announced this before, but last time me and Zach tried to record, I was trying to use a MikroTik router, brand new to me, and it would not let us connect. I had to go back to the Vodafone IP router. It was really weird. I'm now not using that router, but I can say for certain, Ubiquiti's Edge routers do work perfectly with SquadCast. And look, I'm not, by the way, suggesting for 1 second that routers should not play nice with SquadCast, but MikroTik are just a bit odd. So, But I'm looking at this now, and literally I can see, that I've got my audio 100%, my video 100%. I can preview. I can see what recordings we've got. It really does, as a content producer, it gives me so much confidence. Now, look, I've had the odd issues. And do you know what? Most of the issues have been because of people's audio interfaces, not SquadCast. So, I had a guest where they had to keep restarting the audio interface. It's, again, I'm being...
Interesting.
Well, I've experienced it with certain interfaces that are USB 2 seem to play weirdly, and it tends to be Behringer interfaces. My experience.
Interesting.
Which is why the Vocaster 1 is such a good option.
I also find that cables and ports are non-trivial. We've had a number of times in support where plugging it into the USB right next door was fine. This USB port crackles, or, oh, hey, I swapped it out for a different USB cable and now it's fine. So I think these are the things that we tend to focus on our boxes, right? But it's like the things that connect our boxes are part of the signal chain too, right? So I'm working on this is top of mind for me. I'm working on a whole video series on signal chains, for audio and video.
Oh, nice.
Because I just find that it's one of those things that, will help serve a lot of people as creators.
Well, literally, we talk about video signal change, and this is, completely how the sausage is made. Right now, I'm not seeing Zach's face. I'm seeing a thing that says EOS webcam utility, because Canon's webcam driver for their camera is, shall we say, a little bit wonky?
It's buggy at best. Yeah. And I'm testing it out because of my own setup, but because of our customers use this software too. And I like to, I don't necessarily recommend the Blue Yeti mic, but I have one on my shelf right behind me because I test. They're very popular. Yeah, the weird thing about the Canon is that I seem fine in their software, even though I've restarted it, but it's not coming through in the browser just yet. So yeah, it's a bit weird. And I might have to switch back to my Camlink 4K kind of capture card setup, which I was trying to simplify my setup and remove an extra cable and adapter and stuff. But yeah, I don't think this Canon software is quite ready for prime time.
No, I mean, I know Jay, she could use the Sony software, but she uses a Camlink 4K. Me and Jay have literally been figuring out how to move her setup over to her mic entirely. So that's been a lot of hubs and cables and stuff. So, but going back to content creation, having all that power, you could do, tutorial videos, maybe educational content using screen sharing and having the highest quality recordings. I did a training course early this year, and to say that I was disappointed with the recordings that came out of Teams would be an understatement.
Teams. Microsoft records their content for their podcasts and stuff on SquadCast. So I think that says quite a lot about Teams or Skype or something like that.
Look, and we are not by any means disparaging these as communications platforms, because they are. Teams is wonderful as a comms platform, but they are not a cloud recording studio, whereas SquadCast is. And I think that's the biggest piece of advice. Look, if you're serious about your content creation, and we're both Christians, and I think, is it fair to say churches are some of the worst culprits for it'll do?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right about that.
Because there's been a thing that's been going around on TikTok about a church down in Texas that's gone all theater production for the Christmas stuff with a drummer boy on a wire, on a fly wire thing, like an actual guy on flight rig.
I hope there's a safety system.
I hope so too. I hope we're not just praying. I mean, that will work, but my point being, look, I know that during the pandemic, so many churches used Zoom to record interviews and segments. No, please, because the quality's awful.
I'll go farther, James, and say that the U.S. federal government records a number of very important content in terrible quality conditions. It's not really very entertaining content, but the January 6th hearings for, the debacle that's gone on in my country, there's a number of remote recordings in there that are just abysmal quality. It's not even close to SquadCast. And it's wow, these are important testimonies by important people with all the resources in the world, and going to be watched by millions of people and in the archives and all the things. And yeah, good enough is apparently good enough for our federal IT staff.
There you go. This is SquadCast is a great tool for all sorts of recordings. I'm going to probably start using it more for actual video creation, because it's so much simpler in a lot of cases than setting up. And it's worth, of course, mentioning that Apple's continuity camera feature that came about in Ventura and iOS 16.
Yeah, have you tried it?
Yeah, isn't it cool?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool. I've tried it. I've tried Camo. We're friends with the team over there, and we worked with them on official support for their app. So,
oh, nice.
That was really cool. And then to see Apple make it even that much more ubiquitous and available for people, because these are some of the best cameras people have in their setup, and to not use it for content creation. I mean, I just think about a lot of things in technology where our devices kind of act like they're the only device that we use, but in reality, we use a team of devices at any given point in time, and they could do very interesting things together, not just kind of annoy us with more notifications, right? Like we can not just fix the annoying stuff, but give them kind of superpowers, right? Like I would love for my computer to be able to run workloads on my phone while it's sitting idle, because this thing's basically a supercomputer. Why can't they be, collaborative in that way?
Well, I mean, I've got an Intel iMac at the moment, but I know that in a lot of cases, my iPad, which is the 4th Gen Air, and my phone, a 13 Pro, probably in some ways have better ML and better GPUs. As you said, it's incredible. Now, we talk about content creation. It's something that, me and Jay, as we've said, are getting ready to start streaming. But SquadCast doesn't really do streaming. And
I'm curious your thinking there, your plan there, because we're asking creators. You've probably seen in the Squad Pod community, we ask how are people doing live? Where are you streaming to? What's that like as part of your content strategy? Because it's not out of the question, or maybe even obvious for SquadCast or an app like SquadCast to add the ability to stream. So maybe we can just kind of talk about this now, for your audience. I don't know if that would be cool to hear, but
I'm up for that. Let's do it. So look, okay. Crosswise streaming.
What are you thinking?
Well, so crosswise streaming is very simple. We're calling this Crosswise Live, and being really honest, it is mostly a relaunch of Jay's content strategy, Jay's Twitch streams. Jay has she's not abandoned the Frazzly brand, but we're morphing the Frazzly brand into Crosswise Live, and me and Jay will be doing combined streams. We'll be doing streams independently, and it's going to be a lot of gaming content, but it's also going to be a lot of tech help content.
Mostly to Twitch as the destination?
Well, right. We're going to be streaming to Twitch. But there's two use cases. Now, the slight problem not a slight problem with Twitch. The challenge with Twitch is always about, actually, let me rephrase that. It's not a Twitch challenge, because Twitch is effectively just an endpoint that you send video up to, an audio, using RTMP. RTMS, yeah. But OBS, now there are tools where I could bring Jay into OBS. OBS Ninja being one of them. But that's cloud recordings again. So I would only ever have Jay's. Now, it does use WebRTC, which is great, but it's somewhat convoluted. But what we want to be able to do is, look, we haven't finalized any of these plans yet, so don't hold me to any of this, folks. But, we want to be able to hold these tech help sessions where, look, and Zach knows this because I'll be really transparent. I've reached out to Zach, saying, hey, do you need any help with SquadCast? Because I'm still looking for work, and it's not the right opportunity anymore, and that's absolutely fine. But I thought, well, why not use those skills to help the wider community? And so we're looking at a way to launch something that's going to be sort of a combined live stream, then a YouTube series, like a YouTube show, that will be people calling in, like Leo Laporte's old stuff.
Yeah.
Like call for help. And
I was just looking at Twit on Twitter. Yeah.
So we want to do that sort of stuff, but it could be gaming content. But we want to be able to have really high, because obviously, when we do the Twitch recordings, we can put those off to YouTube. They can go up to YouTube. But again, it's only cloud recording. I would much rather take the SquadCast recorded audio and video and produce something so people have a live experience. And that's our thinking now.
Okay.
What could SquadCast potentially offer here? Could it just be something as simple as connect it to Twitch and have some fancy templates that go out? Or is there more that can be done? I mean, I guess we're brainstorming this live on this podcast to an extent, and I'm absolutely fine with that.
Yeah. There's a number of things that we think are interesting here. There's of course the public live, which I think is what you're talking about. But then we also have the private backstage experience now in SquadCast. Mm-hmm. So we kind of think of this as two sides to the same coin. Sometimes you might want to go private for like your super fans, or maybe just like this interview, right? We are essentially recording this with just the two of us here. We don't have an audience, but we could have an audience here. And that could be really cool as like kind of a private live experience. But the destination is SquadCast, right?
Yeah, just to interrupt you slightly there, because that's actually something that we are building up our Patreon offering. Look, we are still a small show. I'm not going to lie, and actually I got real encouragement from Arielle and from Jay, because there's so many podcasts. Okay, it's okay to have small numbers. It's okay. Just keep on going,
I think with podcasting, it's more about the focus of your audience than it is about like the size of your audience. So that is always something that, it's something that advertisers are having to come to terms with and learn, because yes, the web theoretically gives you distribution to all, most of the people on the planet. Well, a good chunk of them. There's a huge number of people who still don't have access to the internet, and that's a whole separate conversation. But in the coming years, let's say, we'll have complete access to the web. In theory, that's the biggest market ever, but in reality, we all kind of are in these little communities, right? These more focused groups, and it's more niche than ever. It's more personalized than ever in a couple ways. And I think that's where there's a bigger shift happening there, where it's not obvious to traditional advertisers, but I think they're coming to terms with it.
Absolutely. But going back to the point, one of the perks of our Patreon plan, some of our higher Patreon plans, is going to be that you can come and sit in on our sessions that we have, because of, we have 10 slots. It will be we need to figure out how we're going to make it fair, so we don't get the same people taking the slot every time. But there's all sorts of things you could do. I mean, straight off the bat, Patreon integration into a SquadCast backstage experience would be incredible.
Yeah, I actually was on a panel at Podcast Movement with somebody from Patreon, and that was exactly what we discussed. And it was like kind of the core idea for this, because we've had the idea for Backstage for some time now, and that was like our founding advisor, Harry Duran, was like, well, I'd love to have like, a Patreon tier that comes with kind of that raw access, and maybe they can ask questions and things like that. So yeah, I think the private Backstage is kind of one half of the coin, and then the public kind of broadcast live stream outbound to a destination like Twitch or YouTube or Facebook, or I think our plan is to support both RTMP as a protocol and HLS, which I believe are the two biggest options. I forget which one is which, but I know YouTube does one and Facebook does the other. Whatever, we're going to support both of those. And then give you the option to both go out live while you're still doing your private recording session on SquadCast, kind of uninterrupted by the stream of the chat, super chat or any of that stuff. And to your point, you get the same benefits of the quality. It's just that there's this other kind of endpoint that it's going to, but you get that, which is going to be like provided and recorded by whatever platform's receiving it at, probably very low quality or, medium quality. And,
cloud
exactly.
Yeah.
Cloud quality. Yeah.
There you go.
And then in addition to that, you still may want to produce that podcast episode, that YouTube channel with more post-production, with more time comes, you can benefit from that by adding more value in post. And that's where we do that really, really well with the technology we have today. So that's really great validation to hear that you're thinking of growing your production in that way, because this is exactly what's been kind of intriguing to us about this. But a lot of times we probe James and say like, okay, well, people ask us for live stream and we'll say, well, what are you doing to do that today? And a lot of times people Which say I'm not. I'm thinking about it. I mean, even at VidCon, we this is a very different audience from the podcast community. We people were asking us about live, and most of them were planning to do it. They hadn't yet done it, and that's encouraging to us. But it's not like there's not an actual like habit there for a lot of people. Gaming is the exception there, where gamers have been doing this for a long time, and that's where I think Jay's background, I think if memory serves, is kind of from there.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why Jay is well, that's why Jay is our streaming coordinator, because she knows this stuff. Jay has set me a very clear task list of what I need to design.
Very cool. For
our screens, and that's of course the other thing. Look, when you're doing gaming streaming, you will have all your fancy overlays. But if you're just doing a simple call-in show or a webinar of some kind, then actually you maybe don't need that complication. Mm-hmm. Just being able to have simple controls or going back to what you said earlier about active speaker, you could give an option to say, hey, just make the focus of the stream be active speaker at this time.
Exactly. Similar
to what you get with Zoom. So there is a lot of potential. And one of the things that I love, and I genuinely mean this, and I'm not just saying this because Zach's here, but is the innovation and the willingness to listen. SquadCast could, and the team could easily say, no, we really don't care about live streaming. We are a video and audio production platform. Go and find your own tools to do this. But that's not what you do. You're working. One of the things I'm really getting a sense of is that you want to be able to enable the entire production experience, either within SquadCast or by partnering with people like Descript. People like with Headliner releasing Eddie recently, things like that. Working with Savvy Cow to have a SquadCast integration, because you went through the process of our booking. I mean, a genuine question. How simple was that for you as a guest?
It was great. Yeah, I just chose the time from the available slots on your calendar, and that put it on my calendar and yours, and created the SquadCast session for us and kind of sent the link along in that calendar invite. So couldn't have been easier from my perspective. And also, every time I see that work, I'm very happy about it, because I also, I'm big fans of Savvy Cal and Derek and the team there, and we're part of a couple different of the same communities, and what they've built is really great experience. So the two together is like, my perfect combo. But, I'm a little biased.
Oh, no, absolutely. I love it. And the fact that we can add questions in, it was something we got from your chat list about understanding people's audio, getting an idea of what people are going to be using ahead of time. And of course, you all seen, do you have headphones you can use? I asked that question. Worryingly, I do get a few no's. But your echo cancellation actually does a good job. You put a video out on this recently.
Yeah, I went pretty deep on it, and it's one of those things that's confusing for everyone. It's confusing for us. So I wanted to really get that clear on the record that what the trade-offs are of why, because some people don't really understand why headphones at all, and what the trade-offs are. And it's one of those things that's like, it's a joke, right? Fix it in post-production is kind of a trope amongst video and audio producers. But, it's a joke because we really are trying to fix it in pre and really just avoid issues altogether, because the amount of time that these things can take to fix in post-production is just absurd. When a small change before you click record can have a huge impact that'll save hours and hours of work. So it is non-trivial. Not that like headphones are a fashion statement or are comfortable or even necessarily accessible, right? Even though it is 2022 and phones have been coming with them for a little while and all that stuff. But yeah, it's one of those things where we just want to make sure people are making an informed decision, because it became clear to us that people were saying, well, I love SquadCast. It was super easy, but I recorded. And when my guest and I talked at the same time, or we laughed at the same time, the quality goes down, and that's a problem for me. So that means I can't use SquadCast. And it's like, well, that's actually because of echo cancellation, which is only needed when people aren't wearing headphones. Oh, we were wearing headphones. Okay, cool. You can turn that off and you won't see that happen to your quality. But the name echo cancellation is ridiculous. It makes no sense. And it's just confusing. So that's where, what'd you think of the video? Do you think it's helpful?
I thought it was really helpful. We'll put a link to it in Michelle. It was incredibly helpful. And
Thank you.
Because, look, your background, yours and Rock's background being audio, I think it gives you a certain authority in being able to speak to these issues. I know, look, it's why you've got, such a good set of partners. We know that you guys are very close with the Focusrite guys.
Yeah, they're great.
They are. I mean, literally, everyone knows Focusrite. On the back of them coming on the show, they sent me a Vocaster 1, said, look, you need to experience this. It wasn't we want editorial content. And, no point, by the way, have, all through our promoting of SquadCast, at no point have Zach or Arielle said to us, hey, can you change this, or can you maybe, do this? We have a completely transparent relationship, as we said earlier, and it really is important. I think it's something a lot of tech companies could learn from. Zach, I'm very much aware of your time, and it's been such a great conversation. I'm excited by what 2023 is going to bring for SquadCast, for Crosswires, and us working together. If you want to check out more about SquadCast, find out more about what they're doing, and if you want to sign up, even if you're not a podcaster, if you're just doing, video interviews, maybe for in-house stuff, absolutely check it out. The $40 a month plan. Just how much is your time worth for quality recordings versus all the messing about you'll have to do in post to try and improve that quality? And I can say, even if Zach and the team weren't being gracious and giving us the studio plan, that would absolutely be something I consider, because the amount of time that the Dolby mastering saves us is incredible. Honestly, I hope people have noticed the difference in our audio since we started using the mastered tracks. Zach, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you on social media? I haven't seen you on Mastodon yet, or have I just missed you?
Yeah, not on Mastodon quite yet, although I've been looking at some of their user experience choices and was reading something by their founder the other day, and I think it's really interesting, the innovations that are happening there. And I don't think anybody really predicted like the disruption that might be about to happen in social media, because it's fascinating stuff, like from many angles. So not on Mastodon quite yet, but I'm on social at Zach in Space on Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn, zachin.space if you want to check out my website. And then we're at squadcast.fm if we can help you record any of the content that we've mentioned today, podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube videos, whatever kind of content you're into creating. We can help you collaborate and connect with anyone in the world to sound and look your best, so your audience can really engage with that content and come back for more. I appreciate you having me on, James. It's been a fun conversation, talking a little bit about some of the challenges we've overcome with our latest release being so ambitious, and then looking ahead. It's been really, really great to reconnect with you on your show, and thank you for having me on as a reoccurring guest as well. I'd love to make this a regular, semi-regular thing if you'll
absolutely. And as you said, there's a lot. Look, you're a technologist. There's a lot more we can talk about. So absolutely. Look, I say this to all my guests, usually post-show, but I'll say it in the show. I've never had a guest who I've not wanted to invite back on the show. And I'm actually working to get some of our previous guests back on our own. But you know what? Scheduling is a lot of fun. We'll put a link to SquadCast in the show notes. In fact, if you want to find out more about SquadCast and help us out by using our affiliate link, head over to crosswires.net/SquadCast. And Matt links to our fancy little affiliate link. Don't you just love 301 redirects in WordPress? They are wonderful little things.
That's part of WordPress.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We will roll the outro. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for listening to this episode of Crosswires. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please drop us a note over to podcast@crosswires.net.
You can also drop us a comment on the post, or if you're a GoodPods user, why not start a discussion there too?
You can find us on Mastodon at crosswires@masthead.social. And if a bird site's still somehow miraculously here, you can follow us there as well at CrosswiresMG. And of course, you can find the show in all the good podcast apps and all the really bad ones too.
If you'd like to check out more of our content, head on over to crossedwires.net/YouTube for all our videos, and keep an eye on our Twitch channel at crossedwires.net/live for our upcoming streams.
If you like what you heard, please do drop a review in your podcast directory of choice. It really does help spread the word about the show.
And of course, if you can spare even the smallest amount of financial support, we'd be incredibly grateful. You can support us at ko-fi.com/crossedwires. That is ko-fi.com/crossedwires.
Until next time, thanks for listening.